Order. Ruth Jones to move the motion. I've got a few other members here. It's also fantastic to be able to open today's debate on government support for the Royal Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals and to recognise its history, praise its work, celebrate and thank its volunteers and supporters in its 200th year. Now, 200 years ago, on the 16th of June 1824, a group of people met in a London coffee shop, determined to change animals' lives for the better. They created the Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals, and this sparked a movement that spread around the world. With kindness at the heart of the mission, they boldly set out to alter the moral feelings of the country. Since that first meeting, the RSPCA has taken the lead in advocating for animal welfare, including working with politicians and decision makers to secure laws that have transformed the lives of millions of animals in the UK and beyond. Alongside this, the RSPCA and its wide network of branches and partners have played a significant role in changing attitudes and behaviours to animals through its education, prevention and scientific work. The Society was the first animal welfare charity to be founded in the world. Before that time, there was little discussion as to whether animals could suffer, and therefore animal cruelty was widely prevalent or not even considered an issue. Animals played a very different role in people's lives. Few people kept pets. Animals were used for work, transport, or even entertainment. Bear and bull baiting was common, and even Parliament Square itself contained one of the most notorious dog-fighting pits in the country, which was eventually closed in 1830. Since then, caring for animals has gradually become woven into the fabric of British society and our laws. People now recognise many animals as sentient beings who deserve our respect and kindness. And I'm very pleased to say Parliament recognised this in the Sentience Act, which was passed here only 2 years ago. But there's still a long way to go. Animals are facing some of the biggest challenges of the past 2 centuries as climate change, habitat loss, cost of living and the pandemic take their toll. This means the RSPCA is needed now more than ever. In 1840, Queen Victoria gave her permission for the then SPCA to add the royal prefix, becoming the RSPCA. At this time, there were 5 full-time inspectors who were paid a guinea a week. Today, the RSPCA has the equivalent of 361 full-time frontline officers, including 233 inspectors and 128 animal rescue officers. These officers cover all of England and Wales, meaning the RSPCA has just 1 inspector or animal rescue officer for every 167,000 people. The RSPCA were early adopters of digital education and now have 4 education and community engagement hubs across the UK. Furthermore, the RSPCA offers animal welfare education to school children, young people and families with opportunities to engage with pets and wildlife. As part of the Pet Education Partnership, a collaborative initiative between 8 of the UK's leading animal welfare organisations, the RSPCA aims to make animal welfare education accessible for every child aged between 5 and 11 in the UK. Now, in 1835, bear and bull baiting was abolished and dog fighting was made illegal, but we know it still continues as an illegal activity today and is investigated by the RSPCA's undercover officers. So despite this the killing of animals for sport in society has continued. Fox and stag hunting and hare coursing were popular pastime in rural areas. But through a combination of campaigning, investigations and legal action, the RSPCA worked tirelessly with other organisations such as the League Against Cruel Sports and International Fund for Animal Welfare to end these practices. In 1911, inspired by the RSPCA, the Protection of Animals Act was passed. This important law tackled almost every type of cruelty to animals. The RSPCA was a pioneer in recognising the need to work closely with politicians and decision makers to secure policy and legal change, and in 1924 employed its first public affairs officer and their first woman, Gertrude Speedwell Massingham. She was a real trailblazer for animal welfare and was the founder of the Council Against Bullfighting. And this year, the RSPCA honoured her through the Speedwell Massingham Award, which is part of the Paw Prince Award scheme. And this has been running since 2008 and awards local authorities and public sector organisations for going above and beyond for animal welfare. Now, Sir Robert Gower, MP for Hackney Central and chair of the RSPCA trustees, set up the Parliamentary Group on Animal Welfare in 1929, the first in the world and the first such group on any issue in this Parliament. The RSPCA still provides a secretariat for this group, the APGAW, as it's now known. More recently, arguably one of the most important legislative changes for animals, the landmark Animal Welfare Act, was introduced in 2006 under a Labour government. The Act introduced the concept of prevention of cruelty to animals rather than only acting after cruelty has occurred. Now, the overwhelming majority of convictions secured by the RSPCA in 2023 were under this very Act. But there is still more work to be done. Currently, more than 100 million animals around the world are still used in research and testing annually. In 2023, 2.6 million procedures were carried out in Great Britain on animals such as mice and rats. The RSPCA have always campaigned strongly for these animals to be replaced with humane alternatives, and data shows that 77% of people agree that the UK government should commit to phasing out the use of animals in scientific research and testing. The RSPCA supports this government's manifesto commitment to accelerate the phase-out of animals used in science and to set up a strategic advisory board, which will bring together stakeholders across academia, industry and charities to work towards this goal. This can have a meaningful impact on how we view and use animals used in scientific experiments, and I do commend the government on setting this goal and hope the board can be set up quickly, and perhaps the Minister could set out a timetable in his response. Moving on to pets today, nearly 60% of households in the UK have at least one pet, with a total of 38 million pets being kept. Of course I will.
I remember for giving way and congratulate her on this debate. Just on the issue of pets, would you agree with me that we are a nation of pet lovers, and she's giving a very, very significant contribution to that commentary. But the example of the pet-loving nature of our nation is often seen when there are the cruelty examples that we see to pets, and the outrage and indignation that is right across the nation, thus indicating and vindicating the support that she's indicating and the rest of us hopefully will do for the RSPCA and the need to support them in all their work.
I thank the Honourable Member for his intervention, and he's absolutely right. We know as MPs, don't we, that the amount of emails we get in our inbox every week, every month, just testifies to how much the public do care about animal welfare, and so I thank him for that. He's made a valuable point there. But in recent years, as owning a pet has become more popular, we've also unfortunately seen an increase in extreme designer dog breeding. For example, recent dogs such as French bulldogs have risen in popularity. Unfortunately, these types of dogs have welfare issues and are known as brachycephalic or flat-faced dogs, and they can suffer from breathing problems, and they're often unable to regulate their own temperature and also have difficulty with exercise. However, we will see these trends continue until there are stronger regulations around the breeding of pets. Social media platforms also have a role to play in this, as extreme breeding trends are often exacerbated by what's promoted on platforms such as Instagram and TikTok. Under the Animal Welfare Act licensing conditions, it is illegal to breed an animal if their breed conformation causes welfare problems. But the wording is vague and has never been used to stop breeding animals that have welfare problems once they're born. And so the RSPCA hopes to see the government clarify this point very soon, maybe as part of an animal welfare strategy. But we have had some successes. Only earlier this year, Parliament decided to phase out the private keeping of primates, showing how attitudes to pets are changing. Similarly, in 2019, Parliament agreed that keeping wild animals in circuses was no longer appropriate in England, as their welfare could not be guaranteed. I hope they will now turn to reviewing the legislation governing the control, exploitation, welfare and conservation of wild animals in England and Wales, which has turned into a complex patchwork of overlapping and sometimes conflicting provisions. Because in 2015, the Law Commission carried out a review into current wildlife legislation, concluding the current legislative framework covering wildlife is outdated and does need reforming. So the RSPCA supports the recommendations of this report and is calling for consolidation of the wildlife law in both England and Wales. Now, as attitudes change and people increasingly understand that animal welfare matters, they are also recognising they can do something about it. Shoppers are becoming more interested in the origins of their food and the well-being of the animals involved. This is affecting what they choose to buy. which is why the RSPCA has been calling for the introduction of easy-to-understand factual labelling on the method of production of all animal products. The consultation on this closed in May of this year, and I appreciate it was under a different government, but perhaps the Minister will be able to set out when the government will publish the results of the consultation and the timetable for the introduction of such a scheme. We've seen a fantastic progress this year for farm animal welfare after a 100-year campaign from the RSPCA. The exporting of live animals for fattening and slaughter was finally banned earlier this year, but there is still more that can be done to improve the lives of farm animals. The RSPCA are calling for an end to cages for laying hens and farrowing crates for sows in the UK. In the UK, enriched cages are still permitted, housing around 10 million egg-laying hens. Enriched cages provide just 9% more usable space per bird than battery cages, which is basically just the size of an A4 sheet of paper for the space for each bird. Also, around 6 million pigs reared for slaughter every year are born in farrowing crates, metal crates within a pen where pregnant sows are placed 1 week before giving birth. With multiple litters in a year, sows can spend up to 15 weeks in these crates a year. Again, the previous government did commit to a consultation on ending the use of cages in farmed animals, and I would support this being restarted by this government. So in conclusion, Mr Twigg, I want to pay tribute to the amazing work undertaken by the RSPCA in the past, and currently and in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed for giving way. I wanted...
Oh, the speech is finished.
Okay, fine.
Yep. Right. The question is that the House has considered the government support for the RSPCA. Jim Shannon.
Mr Chairman, it is indeed a pleasure to serve under your chairship, and can I first of all thank the Honourable Lady for Newport West and Island for leading today's debate and for doing it so well with the detail, the information and the passion that she obviously has for animals, one which I subscribe to as well. The RSPCA celebrate their 200th birthday this year and are the first and the oldest welfare charity to be founded in the world. So the impact of the RSPCA and what it's done over some 200 years is incredible. The RSPCA and its network of agencies and branches paved the way in tackling cruelty and neglect against animals, working closely alongside government to change laws to create a better place for all kinds of animals. So it's great to be here to celebrate that, but also to add support. Happy to give way.
Sorry, that's more modern than it was when I was first here. Right, I used to have to do it myself. I'd like to thank the Honourable Member for giving way, and just to point out that in my area there's a wonderful part of the RSPCA, which is the Brent Knoll Animal Centre, where they rehome dogs, cats, rabbits, ferrets and other small animals, and they're always full. But actually this is not part of the main structure. These centres are not funded by the RSPCA centrally, and I think a lot of people don't understand that, and I wondered if the Honourable Member might actually comment on the fact that these are locally funded through volunteers and donations, time and money.
Chairman, thank the Honourable Lady for their intervention, and yes, I'm well aware of the volunteers and the fundraising it's done. We attend many events in our own constituencies where the charity and the giving is towards the RSPCA. My friend and colleague, the Honourable Member for East London Derry, we're often referred to as an a nation of animal lovers, which of course we are. I can't remember in all my life, as a pretty long one, that we didn't have a dog. Or from Ballywalter, I can remember we had Pekingese dogs, we had collies and terriers, and then latterly with Springer Spaniels. It's always been an evolution from one dog to one, from house dogs to dogs which we use for hunting. Just to give some background, the RSPCA has the equivalent of 361 full-time frontline officers, some 233 inspectors and 128 animal rescue officers. And many of us haven't been touched by the advertisements on TV that we see for the cruelty against animals, and it really does break your heart. And the Honourable Lady is right when you see some of the examples of the cruelty that people do. It's inconceivable. It is for me, and I think it's here for everybody else, to understand why anyone would want to do such harm and cruelty to animals. Happy to give way.
Thank you, Chair. Would Face the Chair. Sorry, I'm learning still. Would the member agree with me that in terms of animal cruelty in Northern Ireland, one of the huge issues is badger baiting, and far too often the sentencings for those type of crimes are far too lenient? Would the member agree with me that there needs to be a look at the law and sentencing in terms of animal cruelty, as badger baiting is a big issue for me and my constituency?
I thank my honourable friend and colleague for that intervention. I'm well aware of those issues. The lady who looks after animal crime and welfare within the PSN is a lady called Emma Meredith. I've known Emma Meredith all her life. And indeed she did for our girl at my wedding, which was some 36 years ago. But she's now the police officer assigned, and badger baiting is one of those issues that she's very aware of. And yes, there is a need to come down hard on those involved, and I'm hoping, and I think there has been some action carried out over the last few years in relation to badger baiting, so I think it's something that is very much on the radar. In Northern Ireland, we are slightly different from the RSPCA, and we are managed and supported by the USPCA. The Honourable Lady will know that. The Ulster Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals is the second oldest animal charity in the world. It was founded in 1836 by Commander Francis Anderson Calder, a retired Navy officer. The charity's first initiative, it gives you an idea of what history did, and the purpose was to erect water troughs across Belfast for the sustenance of the heavily burdened working horses in industrial Belfast. So just to think that was the purpose and the movement for that at that time, for that to happen. The USPCA also support Northern Ireland schools in bringing the importance of animal welfare to life and understanding the needs of animals within the classroom. There's an educational programme that they do, and I'm not sure if they do it in the mainland. They probably do, but I do know that back home they do it regularly, and many schools in my constituency, and indeed I know my colleagues' constituencies, will be frequented by the USPCA, who come down to engage with children. Children love animals, it's a fact. And it's good to engage and endearing them an early interest in animals and their welfare. For so many young people, there's a goal to work with animals in the future, and it's fantastic that this is offered to teach them how to do so. And it does instill a love of animals and an interest in animals in years to come. Mr. Chairman, I read in the briefing supplied to the library ahead of this debate that there were particular concerns surrounding kitten smuggling across the UK. So just the week before last, I met with Alice from the Cats Protection Centre in Dundonald. Kitten smuggling was one of the main topics of discussion, and the statistics that the Honourable Lady showed to me on that day of the visit were incredible. Also, the number of cats that they take in and they rehome. Sometimes it isn't as lost when it comes to kittens, that the purpose of the Cats Protection League, indeed of all charities, Cats Protection Charity, is to try to find them another home. But they neuter them and they make sure that there will be no more kittens coming along whenever they're given out. And some of the cats and kittens that were in there were so badly treated. Again, it's inconceivable to understand how anyone would do that. There have been a number of significant changes in the cat market in the last 5 years, as highlighted in the Cats report, that's the Cats League report of 2023. In particular, there's been a significant rise in purebred and pedigree cats. In addition to this, pet smuggling poses a number of risks to both humans and animals. So there's risks not just to the cats but to the humans as well. So we need to be aware of those issues, and the Cats Protection League and other charities are very much to the fore in that. Smuggled cats may carry transmissible diseases such as rabies and tapeworm that can be dangerous. When I first got married some 36 years ago, and I maybe wasn't all that fond of cats, to be honest with you. I always had dogs, but my wife was a cat lover, so it's a very simple: love me, love my cats. So it's sort of a complete change, and now we have 3 cats in the house. I think we have actually 4 cats in the house. One of them stays outside all the time because we live in a farm. It hunts continuously, but the other 3 they like the warmth of the Aga cooker. But anyway, again, I make the point of how we've got to look at things today. So I look very much forward to the comments of the Minister, and perhaps he could clarify if he has any plans to engage with the devolved nations, including DAERA in Northern. I know the Minister does it regularly, by the way, but on this issue, if it's at all possible, to see what steps we can take to tackle smuggling of cats. I know there's a need for the legislation to be stronger. We know the back door to the Republic of Ireland is through Northern Ireland. We know the back door to the United Kingdom is through Northern Ireland. I think, to be fair to the Shadow Minister who's here, in the last government, the Conservative government, very much were very active in trying to change the legislation and be on top of this. So it would be reassuring to have the same reassurance from the Minister as well, and how that legislation can be made tighter to ensure that dog and cat smuggling isn't taking place. He will be aware that Northern Ireland still has to follow EU pet travel legislation, which complicates things a bit, and follow the EU legislation regarding the transportation of animals, including pregnant animals. So I look forward to hearing the plans to ensure that Northern Ireland are able to align with the rest of the United Kingdom, and what we discuss here can be something we can all grasp. To conclude, Mr. Chairman, the RSPCA have proven to go above and beyond, and last year the RSPCA convicted 447 defendants, including 2 youth offenders, and the prosecution rate was 91.7%. Wow, isn't that good? That gives you an idea. When they take a case on, they want to win it. And if they can do that well, then it's something that was doing. That's even higher than in 2022, or indeed even higher again in 2021. The work that they undertake is incredible, and we are so grateful for all of their work. So I look to the Minister today to answer how we can support these societies and these charities further, as we are truly in debt to their fantastic efforts. Mr. Chairman, thank you so much.
If members want to be called in this debate, need to bob. Becky Giggins.
Thank you, Mr. Twigg. And may I say it's a pleasure to serve under your chairship on what is my very first time contributing in a Westminster Hall debate. I want to pay tribute also to the member for Newport West and Isloyn for securing such a timely debate and speaking so well about some of the achievements of the RSPCA over its 200 years, and indeed setting out some of the challenges that it currently faces. I want to focus my comments this morning on the current issues surrounding the microchipping of dogs and what more can be done to ensure that the system is fit for purpose and properly enforced. I should declare an interest from the start. As a proud owner of a rescue Staffordshire Bull Terrier, animal and indeed dog welfare is very, very close to my heart. Last week, in preparation for today's debate, I visited the Almost Home Dog Rescue near Mould in my constituency of Clwyd East. The team at Almost Home do a fantastic job, and they are a credit to our community. But they were clear that there is a huge UK-wide problem. In their words, the pounds are full, the rescue centres are full, and hundreds of puppies and healthy young dogs are being put to sleep on a weekly basis. It is their experience on the front line, as it were, that the situation is becoming a crisis, and that Lucy's Law, which effectively makes it illegal for third-party and commercial traders to sell puppies and kittens, is not working as it should. After 40 years in rescue, they have never known a pressure like this before. Now, I welcome the fact that I stood on a manifesto that committed to ending puppy smuggling and farming, and I welcome any update from the Minister today on that issue. I also welcome the fact that the Welsh Labour Manifesto committed to the UK and Welsh Government working together on animal welfare issues, including on microchipping. In terms of my background for today, I want to thank the Dogs Trust for meeting with me and providing a briefing around the importance of microchipping. I think everyone here will recognise the benefits of microchipping pets, and dogs in particular. When working effectively, microchipping allows people to rapidly identify a stray or lost dog and return it to its owner, reducing kennel time and cost for local authorities. A rapid return also allows local authority officers to re-emphasise the importance of responsible dog ownership, and therefore deterring further irresponsible abandonment of these pets. In addition, microchipping being traceable reduces the problem of puppy farming and lessening the incidence of infectious diseases and inherited defects. It also importantly provides a strong deterrent to dog theft. The effective operation of the microchipping system is dependent upon accurate records. Stray dogs that are microchipped and have up-to-date microchip records are more than twice as likely to be reunited with their keepers than dogs without a microchip. However, Without properly maintained databases and proper enforcement, microchipping can never deliver everything that it's set out to do. In March of this year, the previous government published its response to the consultation carried out on the operation of cat and dog microchipping systems. The consultation ran from March to May 2022, and it garnered over 1,500 responses. The headline findings were that the overwhelming majority of respondents agreed we should introduce a single point of search portal to improve access to microchip records for approved users, that we should stop pets being registered on more than one database at a time, that the existing keeper should have an opportunity to object before the microchip record is transferred to a new keeper, and that the database operators must record whether a pet is missing or stolen. On making it easier for approved users to access the database records, the government agreed to support the development of a single point of search portal, working further with database operators and key user groups. When it comes to the requirements of databases and maintaining the accuracy of records, the government agreed that it would require database operators to send reminders to customers at least once a year to ensure that this information is up to date. In terms of the transfer of keepers' records, it said it would require database operators to have robust transfer of keepership processes in place and allow, where appropriate, the current registered keeper up to 28 days to object to the transfer. And crucially, on enforcement, it said it would require dog breeder information to remain as a permanently accessible part of the microchip record for enforcement purposes. Now, clearly, these commitments were made under the previous government, so I would welcome the Minister's comments on these issues today and update on whether actions as set out here will be taken forward. I would also be more than happy, as I'm sure others would, to work with him on making sure we get this system right and build on some of the important progress that's already been made. I'm also aware that the UK and Welsh governments are working closely together on this issue, particularly when considering future changes in relation to microchipping databases for both dogs and cats, including accessibility and a single point of entry. I would welcome any update the Minister could give on those discussions and way forward. Finally, as others have done, I want to pay tribute to the work of the RSPCA, the world's first and oldest animal welfare charity. I look forward to working alongside them and others and other animal welfare groups to raise the standards of dog welfare during the course of this Parliament and beyond. Thank you, Mr Twigg.
Adrian Ramsey.
Thank you, Mr Chair, and it's a pleasure to serve under you, and thank you to the Honourable Lady for securing this important debate. It's a pleasure to speak on this topic, as protecting and advocating for the voices of animals who can't speak for themselves is something that's hugely important to me, both personally and politically. Personally, because care for animals is one of the things I can remember back to my childhood as being one of the things I first cared about most. And I took the decision as a 15-year-old not to consume any animal products, and that's something that I've stuck with ever since. And as other members have referred to, I also have a rescue cat called Bella, and I think our relationships with our pets does often open our hearts to how we think about other species. And then politically, animal protection issues are one of the top issues that I hear about from my constituents in my inbox, as I'm sure is the case for other members. The British public really is a nation of animal lovers. And of course, animal protection is core to Green philosophy and to Green Party politics. So I want to join others in recognising the vital work that the RSPCA has done over the 200 years since its formation in a London cafe, the first and oldest animal welfare charity to be founded in the world. And as a nation of animal lovers, we know that the RSPCA has been keen to fostering that reputation, as well as to helping care for the hundreds of thousands of animals each year that are abandoned, neglected, tortured, harmed, or simply need rehoming. They've also been key when it comes to securing some of the strongest animal protection laws in the world, and I want to pay tribute to their remarkable achievements in this respect. It's no exaggeration to say that without the RSPCA, animals in this country today, and indeed worldwide, would be far less protected from cruelty. So thank you to everyone that's been part of their successful track record, from those early founders to the frontline inspectors and the protection officers who make a tangible difference on a daily basis, and those who successfully bring such a high number of prosecutions for breaking laws like the Animal Welfare Act. This work really matters, and I hope the government will continue to actively support it. Now, much has changed in the 200 years since the RSPCA was established, including the context in which they operate. Our understanding of the suffering that occurs when all types of animals are subject to testing has grown massively, for example, and I very much hope that the RSPCA and the government gets behind promoting modern and more effective cruelty-free methods of testing that don't involve animals. As has our attitude towards animals, that's also changed. 61% of the British public, for example, have some discomfort about the way animals are treated on farms, on factory farms in particular, according to research this time last year from the Social Markets Foundation. Sadly, though, animal exploitation does continue to occur, from the treatment of the 15 Gentoo penguins at London Zoo, currently kept in an enclosure with no natural light or fresh air, and only 6 or 7 feet of water depth in which to dive, to the continued use of greyhounds in racing, where dogs face the constant risk of injury or death. And I'm incredibly proud that compassion towards animals has always been core to the Green Party, and that at our autumn conference recently, we became the first party to pledge a ban on greyhound racing, a position that the RSPCA supports, as does the majority of the public. And I'd invite the Minister to comment on the government's plans in this respect in terms of ending cruelty to animals in so-called sport. And animal abuse is sadly endemic in considerable parts of our food and farming system, including the proliferation of huge chicken sheds, some holding tens of thousands of chickens in incredibly cruel, unnatural conditions, and a big cause of the river pollution scandal. And in my area in East Anglia, in Norfolk and Suffolk, we're seeing a proliferation of these huge industrial sheds, including in Methwold, for example, where the World Wildlife Fund has highlighted that there are real climate impacts, environmental impacts, as well as animal welfare impacts of this, and has suggested that this project needs to be stopped due to the climate impact and the cumulative impact of the number of these projects taking place, including on nutrient pollution and water quality. So I'd challenge the government and invite the Minister specifically to comment on what will be done to address this proliferation of huge industrial chicken sheds with the huge impact it has on basic standards of animal welfare, as well as on environmental pollution and other issues for local communities. The RSPCA has sought to tackle the treatment of farmed animals specifically with the RSPCA Assured scheme, originally known as Freedom Food, when it was created 30 years ago. This seeks to hold certified producers to higher welfare standards than are required under UK law. However, as has been widely reported, Farm Assured has fallen short of its own high standards, with concerns that overcrowding, poor hygiene, and in some cases physical abuse of livestock by farm workers are in evidence on certain farms. And I therefore welcome the RSPCA's decision to conduct an internal review of the scheme. This is one that must be done to ensure that the RSPCA reputation is not used as a cover for such measures. And I note that the President and Vice President of the RSPCA, Chris Packham, and the former Green MP Caroline Lucas are closely monitoring the outcome of this RSPCA review. So as we get to the 200-year anniversary of the RSPCA and warmly welcome and congratulate its many achievements, what I'd encourage the RSPCA to do and the government to consider is the ways in which we need to strengthen protection for animals going forward, whether that's in addressing the cruelty in the proliferation of these huge industrial chicken sheds and the impact that has on the environment and on animal protection, whether it's the smuggling of puppies and kittens, as other members have referred to, the need for stronger regulation on breeders to ensure high welfare standards for dogs and cats, and in particular to clamp down on the trend of breeding for extreme traits in dogs, which causes huge welfare conditions, including for breathing, for walking, and basic welfare standards. I'd like the Minister to respond on that specifically. I'd also call on the government to ban the manufacture and use of snares and to address the cruelty that can occur with use of animals in sport. For example, members may not be aware that there were 175 deaths of horses on racecourses in 2023, and the horse racing industry needs to show how it will stop deaths of horses on racetracks. So we've come so far, haven't we? We're a nation of animal lovers. We're proud of the work of the RSPCA to support particularly dogs and cats and animals that are our beloved pets. And yet there is so much more work to do, which I look forward to seeing the RSPCA being central to. And I'd very much welcome hearing from the Minister at the end of the debate on some of the specific animal abuse issues that I've highlighted that I know the British public wants to see addressed. Thank you, Chair.
Your Furness.
Thank you, Mr Twigg. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairpersonship. I want to start by congratulating my honourable friend, the member for Newport West and Isherloin, I think I got that right, for securing today's debate and for her excellent speech. The RSPCA is not just the UK's largest animal welfare charities. It is one of our nation's most treasured and recognisable institutions. For a startling 200 years, it has been kept afloat thanks to the generous donations of the British public. This just goes to show that we truly are a nation of animal lovers and cherish the work that the RSPCA do to help them. Their work stretches across every part of the country, and I am so looking forward to visiting my local branch on Friday. It's a shame that the life of an MP is not more compatible with pet ownership, otherwise I would not be leaving there empty-handed. An armful of them, probably. Yeah. The RSPCA's workload is staggering. Last year, they averaged over 2,500 calls every single day, received over 20,000 abandonment calls, and rehomed 27,000 animals. We appreciate all of that they do. It is heartbreaking to hear stories of pets being abandoned by their owners. Sadly, the cost of living crisis and the surge of so-called pandemic puppies has created a perfect storm whereby more and more people cannot afford to properly care for their beloved companions.
Thank you. Thank you for allowing me to intervene, but I wanted to just point out that it's counterintuitive, isn't it? In the cost of living crisis, one of the things that keeps people's mental health so fit and together can be the fact that they have a pet. And I know that my local centre, to which I referred earlier, it costs them £1,300 a day to run the place, but actually where they are able to match pets with people, then those people very often benefit enormously from improved mental health because of having the company of another animal. Yeah.
I thank the honourable member for bringing up that very pertinent point. And I think particularly through COVID, which was very stressful for everyone, you know, people's pets were their comfort and were also their form of exercise as well. In times when, you know, we are in distress, it's sort of proven that dogs will calm you down and make you have something to get up for in the morning and things like that. So thank you. As difficult as it can be, the RSPCA is always there if owners can no longer afford the cost of owning a pet. There is never an excuse for abandonment, but however the animals get to them, the RSPCA is there for every one of them. As an animal lover myself, and having adopted a dog, well, my father adopted a dog for me when I was a child, and having adopted a cat some years ago, particularly when I adopted the cat, I was really surprised at the thoroughness of vetting, if you like, of us. And most certainly we were interviewed. Someone came to my home and checked the garden, and we were on a busy road, and did, you know, sort of do the matching that the honourable member over there has spoken to before. And that is very comforting to know that the pets that sometimes have been abandoned are going to the right people in the right places who can look after them. Looking after a Chihuahua or a Great Dane is a very different thing, I would imagine, not having had either, but I would imagine there are different focuses and different housing abilities to do that. The ban on puppy and kitten smuggling is long overdue. The previous government dragged their feet on this for far too long, and animals have suffered as a result. I look forward to hearing from the Minister about his plans in the area. I also welcome our manifesto commitment to work towards the phasing out of animal testing. Animal testing has been vital for many of our most important scientific and medical discoveries, but technological advances mean we can look forward to an age where it is no longer needed. And I hope the Minister can today outline the way forward for us. I'm confident that the government's work in this area will extend beyond our manifesto commitments to ensure we remain world leaders when it comes to animal welfare. Given the RSPCA's expertise in this area, we must listen when they call for legislative changes. There is obviously issues that have been mentioned by my other colleagues about regulation, and I think the suggestion from my honourable friend from Islwyn, Newport and Islwyn, should be listened to, and I would be interested to see what the Minister says about establishing an animal health strategy, which I feel would have the support of Parliament should it proceed into the future. I again want to thank my honourable friend, the member for North West and Islwyn, and I've said it so many times now that I will be able to remember it, maybe, for giving us the opportunity to celebrate 200 years since the RSPCA was formed. This debate has been a great chance to reflect on how far we have come and discuss what more there is to do. And I look forward to seeing real progress in the years ahead. But most of all, I want to thank all those associated with the RSPCA, the donors, the workers, the board members, the fundraisers. I really want to congratulate them and wish them a very happy 200th birthday this year. Thank you.
Tim Farron.
Pleasure to serve under your guidance in the chair. A tremendous opportunity to, an honour to follow many great speeches, but most of all, my honourable friend, member for Newport East and Islwyn, something like that. So, Islwyn, thank you very much. The honourable member for Brightside and Hillsborough has done a masterclass in helping us to pronounce Newport West and Islwyn. But my honourable friend made a really, really great opening speech, and we're all to be very grateful to her for securing this debate. I think it's incredibly important that we mark the 200th anniversary, the first charity of its kind and still the leading one and still the largest charity, animal welfare charity in the United Kingdom. There's no two ways about it, that how we treat animals, wildlife, livestock, pets, whatever form they take, is a mark of the kind of culture and society that we are. Are we a people who are kind? Are we a people who are considerate? Are we a people who consider those who are more vulnerable than us, whether they be human or other animals? That is a measure of whether we truly are a civilised society. And we have to thank and praise the RSPCA for being one of the cornerstones of what it is to live in a civilised country today. From a local perspective, we have so much to be grateful for the RSPCA for. I represent 1,500 farms, the RSPCA inspectors helping our farmers and supporting animal welfare right across our huge and beautiful communities of Westmoreland and Lonsdale. Specifically, the annual Appleby Horse Fair, the RSPCA's focus upon that event and the towns and villages around Appleby, Kirkby, Stephen and other places around and about where there is great need for the RSPCA's intervention, and they do so, and we are very grateful to them. RSPCA Westmoreland, a wonderful branch. We praise the inspectors, all the volunteers, the people who make that outfit so very, very successful, from their base in Kendal to their shops in Bowness and in Kendal itself. They rely on donations. We've heard from many people in this debate today. 0.1% of all of the RSPCA's income comes from a government source. That leaves the rest of it raised by hard-working volunteers. And when you look at their funding, it is spent incredibly effectively. So 82 pence out of every pound that they raise goes on direct interventions to preserve animal welfare. 1 pence in every pound goes on governance. The other 17p goes invested in raising the next pound. And it's so important we remember that a really important part of what we do, what RSPCA do, is in raising money to be able to do the fantastic work that they do. The work of the RSPCA, I guess, is both practical and political. And it's important to reflect that and to praise them for both. So it's been a really great debate, and I won't cover everything that everybody's said because of time, but let's just start with my honourable friend for Newport East. Did she talk rightly about the issues to do with breeding regulations, or the lack of them, and how the immense suffering that can be caused by animals because of specific bred characteristics. I had the pleasure, and indeed it was in many ways a very sobering experience, of visiting Battersea Dog and Cats Home last year, and I saw that tiny fraction of those animals, in particular a dog, who were lucky enough, so to speak, to be able to have medical intervention to undo the consequences, the issues that led to respiratory problems, great suffering and shorter lives. And it's a reminder to me why it's so important we look to regulate ownership as well as breeding. And when I were a lad, we had the dog licence. I'm not convinced it's not a good idea actually to go back to such a system where we often talk about dangerous breeds. Generally speaking, we're talking about poor owners, and we need to make sure that we have a licensing system that regulates that, so that our animals are cared for and well reared. But she made wonderful points about the setting out those advances, and reminded us that there have been many great things that this Parliament has done, both recently over a longer period of time, more recently on animal sentience, on for instance, the issues to do with preventing primates being kept as pets. Many of these things have happened, if not all of them, because of RSPCA pressure, and we are to be very grateful for that. Honourable friend, the member for Strangford, talked about a number of issues, but he talked specifically, again, how much the RSPCA does with so little. He also focused very rightly on the RSPCA's educational work, making sure that young people from a very early age know how important it is to value animals and to treat them with kindness. I think I'm the opposite of the honourable member for Strangford. I was the one brought up with cats. My wife was the one brought up with dogs, and she won. We had a wonderful couple of ginger toms when we were first married, called Eric and Ernie, who were terrorised by my toddler, who is now 23, and they moved next door and lived long and prosperous lives as a result. No need for RSPCA intervention then. That's the last cat, sadly, that I own. But moving on to the member for Clwyd East, who made a brilliant speech. So welcome to this place and to the the Westminster Hall family. She talked about, in particular, the importance of rescue centres and how many of them are full. The resources that are available are too few, and so many are tragically put down. Healthy and otherwise maybe happy animals. She talked about the importance of microchipping, and she also spoke about the importance of tackling puppy and kitten smuggling and farming, something which the last government shaped to do and didn't do. We had an animal welfare bill, which was in the 2019 Conservative Manifesto, which was very good, ready to go, and they took it to bits and did some of it. And that was a terrible waste, because there was absolutely a majority in this place in the last Parliament to pass that bill. So I hope this new government will now finish the job and indeed go further. But she made some excellent points alongside that as well. Honourable member for Waveney Valley, which we were very pleased to hear his excellent and impassioned speech. He talked about the important, kind of the hard side of what the RSPCA do, the importance of bringing prosecutions. Then there must be justice. When people treat animals unfairly and cruelly, we should do more than just wring our hands, and we are to be very grateful to the RSPCA, its inspectors and officers, for making sure that justice is done and prosecutions happen. I'm happy to give way. Yeah.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to point out, I think that there's quite a lot of research that shows that people who have been violent to others very often, I don't want to say started, but there are indicators that show that cruelty to animals is a precursor very often to cruelty to people. And I think the RSPCA has a good place in its work to actually identify people who are capable of doing the most dreadful things to animals, who might then go on to offend against other people if those haven't happened in reverse.
I mean, tragically, my honourable friend for Wells and Mendip Hills is absolutely correct in what she says, and there's so much evidence out there to back that up, sadly, that many people who abuse human beings started off, shall we say, learnt their trade with how they treated animals, and that is shocking. And it's important that the RSPCA, in dealing with, as the Honourable Member for Waveney rightly pointed out, dealing with the prosecutions, in many ways perhaps we end up protecting human beings in the long run by tackling those who abuse animals. He also spoke very importantly about the impact of animal welfare issues on pollution, and in particular the huge industrial style chicken sheds and what that means for water quality. And also about the importance of welfare of farmed animals, which I'll come back to if I have a minute in my conclusion. The Honourable Member for Sheffield Brightside and Hillsborough spoke about many things, including the RSPCA's commitment to rehoming and ensuring good homes for those who've been abandoned, and we need to support them to do that because, of course, in so many cases, as the Honourable Member for Clwyd East said, that there just aren't enough of these animals being rehomed because of the lack of space in the shelters. And then in an earlier intervention, my honourable friend, Member for Wells and Mendip Hills, talked about the clear and attested benefits for our mental health from pet ownership. There's no two ways about it. So I now, having lost to my wife, we have dogs. We have a chocolate lab called Ted, who is my running companion. I have a running lead. He pulls me up the hills. Awesome. We also have an elderly and decrepit Springer Spaniel, Jasper, who used to be my running companion, and he improves my mental health by reminding me that I'm not the most decrepit member of our household. But bless him. But you put him in water, you'd think he was a seal. Yeah, go on.
I'd like to just offer some balance as well, because it comes to me that actually the RSPCA was involved in an amazing project working with young offenders on the South Coast, where actually young people who had very often ended up in effectively the prison system, who had really never been loved or had anything to love, had actually had the opportunity to work with horses, big, powerful animals who can hurt them much more than anyone can. They can hurt them. But it was an amazing project which allowed the recovery of young people. So I just want to give that bit of balance to my previous
and
point.
she makes a really, very good point there as well. I think that's absolutely true. So animals are good for us, so we should be good to them. And the RSPCA have been great at being able to encourage both sides of that. So, in conclusion, let's just look at, we said earlier on, and I think it's right to say, and pay tribute to the RSPCA for their practical work and for their political work, lobbying to make this place kinder to animals and our society kinder to animals. So they have a list of ambitions, and we've gone through many of them, but just to list a handful of them: to stop illegal puppy and kitten trading, to improve farmed animal welfare, to end the severe suffering of animals used in science, to secure legal protection for animals, establishing an Animal Protection Commission, and to achieve statutory powers in England and Wales for RSPCA inspectors, and indeed more internationally to secure a UN declaration for animals. And the things that we should be doing in this place to go further and to meet the high standards the RSPCA set us is indeed to do things like banning puppy and kitten smuggling and farming, to end the use of inhumane cages, particularly when it comes to laying hens on an industrial scale, to move away where it's safe to do so from animal testing for medical and other forms of science. But then there's broader things as well. I mean, in the last Parliament, we had a government that did trade deals with countries with poor animal welfare standards than our own, and therefore effectively exporting problems to other countries and undermining our farmers who have relatively very high animal welfare standards in the process. They rewarded those producers overseas with poorer welfare standards than ours and penalised our farmers with higher welfare standards. That was wrong. I hope this government will do something about it. We also, the thing I will praise about the last government, that for all sorts of other problems there are with the change to the new farm payment scheme, farming in protected landscapes, or FIPL for short, which is is available for grant support for farmers in places like the lakes and the dales and other protected landscapes, that allows farmers to move towards accommodation and other capital kit that allows them to keep their animals at a higher welfare standard. That money runs out at the end of March. I'd love the Minister to address that. FIPL has been one of the few good things so far to come out of the botched transition from the old farm payment scheme to the new one, and it's good for animal welfare and it's good for farmers. And more generally, let us remember that one of the reasons why we have higher animal welfare standards in farming in this country than in other places like Australia and the US is because we have the tradition of family farming, therefore close husbandry. Put bluntly, if you're an Australian or an American farmer, the first time you know your livestock is unwell is when you find its sun-bleached bones the next year. The reality is in the United Kingdom, we have a closeness and therefore a tenderness and a practical way of being able to care for our animals. So what can we do to make sure in the farm transition we don't do what is currently happening and see huge landlords being the ones who benefit, thanks to the mistakes of the last government, and instead make sure that smaller farmers who are currently not able to get into those schemes. I spoke yesterday in the debate of a hill farmer I spoke to recently who's lost 40,000 in farm payments. He's gained 14 in single farm in sustainable farm incentive to replace it. Even that cost him 6,000 to get into to try to get the land agents to get him through the hoops. But what that means is people like him potentially go out of business and we'll end up with ranch farming in the UK rather than the family farming we need if we really care about animal welfare in farming. So in short, 200 years is absolutely something we should celebrate. They lack resources, the RSPCA, we need to support them to have more. There are so many laws that do not support animal welfare in the way we'd want them to, and that includes with government policy that advantages those that mistreat those animals both home and abroad. The RSPCA has done so much, wants to do so much more, and it's our job as a Parliament to support them. Thank you.
Opposition from bench, Robbie Moore.
Thank you, Mr Twiggin. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship. And can I congratulate the Honourable Member for Newport West and Ishloin for securing this really important debate. I know, having interacted with the member many a times in the previous parliamentary session when she was holding the role as a shadow minister in DEFRA, just how much she cares deeply about animal welfare issues. And it's good to see that she is championing those issues by securing this important debate. And what better way than doing it for the RSPCA in their 200th anniversary year. And it is in thanks to part of the hard work of bodies like the RSPCA covering enforcement, education and campaigning that the UK sits as the highest G7 nation on the World Animal Protection Index. And can I welcome Chris Sherwood from the RSPCA as the Chief Executive in the public gallery alongside his team. The RSPCA's work is truly staggering in scale and spans over 2 centuries of dedication. In 2023 alone, the RSPCA responded to over 110,000 instances and provided over 500,000 hours of care to animals needing treatment or rehabilitation. We mustn't forget that every 32 seconds, the RSPCA received a call on their cruelty and advice line, and nearly 10,000 people offered their time as volunteers to the RSPCA, which is truly commendable. This is a monumental effort, which means thousands of wild animals, pets and livestock have received care and protection from cruelty. And vitally, the RSPCA have also conducted much work with animal owners to deliver important advice on how best to care for their animals. Now, I agree with all members that have made the positive comments about the RSPCA in today's debate, because the RSPCA is a real success story in how people across the country can come together to make a difference about something that they really care deeply about. It is fantastic that we live in a country in which people are empowered to make a difference and feel free to act on their convictions without relying solely on state inspectorates. And as has been highlighted through this debate, the RSPCA received almost no government funding, operating through charitable donations and their internal fundraising operations. The RSPCA plays a vital role in the enforcement of our animal welfare laws. Through private prosecutions, every one of us has the right to bring forward a prosecution where we feel a crime has been committed, and the RSPCA regularly does this through a sponsoring individual. And I hope that the government will continue to support private prosecutions, as they are a vital part of our legal system, ensuring the law is owned and accessible to us all and not just the state. Of course, the RSPCA carries out this work under the law carries out this aspect of work under the law, and I would like to take a moment to highlight some of the work under the previous government did to strengthen the legal protections for animals. Since leaving the European Union, we have had greater freedom to determine our own animal welfare law, including passing the Animal Sentience Act, a landmark piece of legislation which provided much more power. And the Act also created the Animal Sentience Committee, providing expert advice to government on animal welfare reforms. The Animal Welfare Livestock Exports Act also delivered on commitments from the previous government to ban the export of live animals, ending the unnecessary stress, exhaustion and injury caused by their export. A piece of legislation which I know has already been commented by other members in this debate as being a good piece of legislation that was introduced. And in 2016 and 2023, under the Conservative administration, we made changes to the law requiring dogs and cats, respectively, to be microchipped in England, ensuring that they can be reunited with their owners. And it was good to hear the comments and welcome to Westminster Hall, the member for Clwyd East, on the comments that she was making specifically around microchipping. And in 2019, wild animals were banned in circuses, and in 2021, the Animal Welfare Sentencing Act increased the maximum possible sentence for animal cruelty from 6 months to 5 years. And I would like to pick up on the points that was made from the Honourable Member for Strangford around the work that the previous administration was doing collectively with our devolved nations. And I would hope that the Minister, as I'm sure he will do in his role, to continue the dialogue with all devolved nations to ensure that we can work at pace on improving animal welfare legislation. And I also urge the government to continue at pace the key areas of work that we were doing in terms of livestock worrying. In particular, we need to ensure that the toughening of regulations surrounding livestock worrying through the implementation of the Dogs Protection of Livestock Amendment Act will continue to receive support from the government. Time and time again, we hear too often that farmers are seeing their own livestock being killed or seriously savaged or seriously injured as a result of people taking their dogs across fields, and this needs to stop. So I hope that the government will introduce this piece of legislation and it can become law. And I would like to seek confirmation from the Minister that that will be the case. It is only right that those who are responsible with their pet, when privileged to pass across someone else's land, feel the full consequences of their actions. And I would like to, at this moment in time, thank the Civil Service team for their assistance, not only to me, but previous ministers in the work that they were doing on the pieces of legislation that we were introducing when we were in administration. Another area I know that the RSPCA have been campaigning on for some time is the distress caused to animals by the irresponsible use of fireworks. This is an issue particularly relevant in my own constituency of Keighley and Ilkley, where fireworks are regularly set off throughout the year, late into the evening, sometimes in all hours of the night. This causes huge distress to pets and other animals, not to mention their owners struggling to sleep. And I would therefore take the opportunity to ask the Minister what work the government plans to undertake to enforce our existing firework law, but also whether the Minister believes that this is it is necessary to toughen up existing legislation in this area. As all members have highlighted through their contributions today, we are a nation of animal lovers, and what better way to celebrate that by holding today's debate, celebrating the work of the RSPCA over the last 200 years. And again, I would like to champion the work that my honourable friend from Newport West has been doing on raising the matters of animal welfare, and I hope that she'll continue to champion that from the government side of the benches. And I hope that with continued cross-party support, the RSPCA will continue to deliver the fantastic care it already does for animals all across the country.
Minister. Thank you. It's a great pleasure to serve with you in the chair, Mr. Twigg. And can I join in the congratulations to my honourable friend, and she's indeed a very good friend, the member for Newport West and Ishlin, on securing this important debate. I thought her opening speech setting out the history and the issues was very thorough and absolutely typical of her deep knowledge of these subjects, which she displayed, of course, when she served with me as a member of the shadow team over many, many years. And I'm delighted that she's continuing to be a staunch advocate for animal welfare in this place. And delighted that her commitment to this cause was recognised last month when I'm told she won the Nature 2030 Award for Animal Welfare. And can I also thank the Shadow Minister for his kind words from my colleague. They're very well received. Could I also pay tribute to the RSPCA's outgoing Chief Executive, Chris Sherwood, and wish him well in his new role, which I'm told is at the RSPCA. So I'm delighted to take part in today's debate and reply, celebrating the RSPCA's 200th anniversary and some of the achievements since that first meeting in the London coffee shop in 1824. And it's been a very good debate, in my view. I was warned in advance that we'd probably get a number of people's pets mentioned. So we've had Bella from Waveney Valley, we've had Ted from Westmoreland and Lonsdale. I'm not going to add my own, but these debates, and I'd welcome those who are new members to the happy band that joins these Westminster Hall debates on a regular basis. I suspect we're all going to get to know each other even better over the next few years. And we've had, of course, no debate like this would be incomplete without a contribution from the Honourable Member for Strangford, and I'll come to some of his comments in a minute. But I was particularly pleased to welcome the member for Clwyd East. She made very important points about the microchipping consultation, and I can tell her that the points she's making are under very, very serious consideration. The points around the databases are very well made, but inevitably complex. And I was pleased to see the member for Waveney Valley here. He raised a series of important points. Clearly, there are issues around greyhound racing and welfare. I have to tell him that those involved in that sport are making considerable efforts to address those issues, but we monitor it carefully, and we will make sure that if action is needed, that it will be proportionate and sensible. And he also raised important points around poultry production. Of course, we want to improve in every way we can animal welfare. I'll just gently say to him that the trade issues are complicated, and there is no point in us moving unless we can move in tandem with others. Exporting cruelty doesn't solve the problem. It's a complicated set of issues, but we clearly want to make as many improvements as we can. And I was pleased to hear from my honourable friend also from Sheffield Brightside and Hillsborough and her important points on animal testing, and I'll come to those in a moment. But returning to the RSPCA, as we always say, as a nation of animal lovers, the RSPCA plays a crucial role and absolutely should take significant credit for helping to shape the attitudes towards animal welfare that underpin our society. And I was very interested to hear the comments from the Honourable Member for Strangford about the UPCA, and welcome his comments, which informed my thinking, because I'm not sure I was entirely aware of the work that they do. But their inspectors and the RSPCA's inspectors and the animal rescue officers who work in often extremely challenging circumstances to investigate and rescue animals from harm deserve all our thanks and praise, as do the efforts of staff and volunteers who work so tirelessly to rehabilitate and rehome so many animals to give them a better life. And the RSPCA has proved itself to be a formidable champion for animal welfare over the past 200 years, and successive governments have greatly benefited from their expertise and advice. Now, a number of campaigns and issues have been raised, and I'll try and set out our position on some of the main ones, starting with kitten and puppy smuggling. Now, we outlined in our manifesto that we're committed to ending puppy smuggling. Since the pet travel rules were harmonised with the European Union in 2012, there's been a significant increase in the number of non-commercial pet movements into the UK. Sadly, they've tripled since 2011 to over 320,000 dogs and cats in 2023. And the number of dogs, cats and ferrets imported under the commercial rules has also significantly increased over the last few years. And I listened again closely to the Honourable Member for Strangford's comments on cat movements as well. Now, by its very nature, we can't know the true extent of pet smuggling operations, but we know that commercial imports of dogs and cats are being disguised as non-commercial movements, as these are subject to less stringent checks. Sadly, there's also an emerging market for the importation of heavily pregnant dogs and dogs with cropped ears, and this is a painful practice which has rightly been banned in the UK for over 15 years, and we intend to clamp down on those unscrupulous traders who prioritise profit over welfare. It's also linked to some of the dog breeding issues, and we're working closely with the UK Bracephalic Working Group to reduce the number of dogs that are affected by that condition. Moving on to wildlife, my honourable friend, the member for Newport West and Islin, mentioned the overriding recommendation of the 2015 Law Commission report into wildlife legislation, namely that wildlife laws in this country need to be consolidated. Now, I can't today make any commitments to bring about that consolidation, but it's clear there needs to be more consistency and clarity. And as outlined in our general election manifesto, this includes an explicit commitment to bring an end to the use of snare traps, which I'm sure honourable members will welcome. But I'm conscious there are other wildlife traps for which questions are also posed as to their humaneness, and the law should be there to improve the protection of our wild animals, not only from an ethical standpoint, but because protection for wildlife is a crucial part of our approach for meeting our nature recovery ambitions. I'm happy to give way.
Big up to the Minister for his speech, and it's wonderful to see him in his place. I spent 5 years before my election to this House working in the office of the Member for Newport West and Islin and the Shadow Deputy with the Minister, so it's very good to be here listening to him. But can I urge him on that point to be bold and ambitious? Listening to the Shadow Minister earlier on, it was like a rehash of a previous life, and it wasn't quite the rose-tinted version from my recollection anyway. So as we approach these points, as we seek to have the strongest approach to animal welfare, be bold and let's do what they didn't.
I'm grateful to my honourable friend for his intervention, and I will always listen to his exhortations to be bold and watch this space in the coming few months, I would say. Finally, on wildlife, while significant sanctions are available to judges to hand down to those convicted of most wildlife crimes, I know there are questions as to why there are different penalties for similarly abhorrent acts against different species, and bringing more consistency on this point seems worthy of closer consideration, and the government will look at how best to deliver nature restoration and enforce animal welfare standards for its wildlife. Now, moving to the points particularly raised by the honourable member for Sheffield, Brightside and Hillsborough around phasing out animals used in experiments. The use of animals in science, highly sensitive issue, and where we agree with the RSPCA that replacing the use of animals with humane alternatives is absolutely essential. That's why we made in our manifesto a commitment to partner with scientists, industry and civil society as we work towards the phasing out of animal testing. And we're currently engaging with key stakeholders with an interest in animal research as to how we will take this commitment forward. And I did notice in my honourable friend from Newport and Islin's opening statement, she asked for a timetable, and I can assure her it will be done in due course. The UK is world leading in the development of alternative methods to using animals, and this government is keen to ensure that they are utilised wherever possible. However, technology is not quite yet at the stage whereby animal testing can wholly be replaced. We want to replace the use of animals in scientific procedures where we can, but for now the carefully regulated use of animals in scientific research remains necessary if we're to protect humans and the wider environment. The use of animals in such testing is limited to specific purposes. Furthermore, the use of animals in scientific procedures is only permitted if there is no alternative available. Where the number of animals used is the minimum needed to achieve the scientific benefit, and where the potential harm to animals is limited to the absolute minimum needed to achieve the scientific benefit. These are collectively known as the 3 R's of replacement, reduction and refinement. Now, I also recognise the significant public interest in the welfare of farmed animals and the immense contribution that the RSPCA has made to help raise farm animal welfare standards through its lobbying and through its farm assurance scheme, RSPCA Assured. And I hear the comments made by the Honourable Member for Waveney, but I'm confident that the work the RSPCA is doing on this will restore confidence in that very, very important scheme. Now, I appreciate the strong public demand for clearer animal welfare information on the food they buy to help them make purchasing decisions that align with their values. The public consultation on fairer food labelling was undertaken earlier this year by the previous government. That consultation sought views on proposals to extend existing mandatory methods of production labelling. Now, we're currently carefully considering all the responses to the consultation before deciding on next steps, and we will be publishing a response to this consultation in due course. Turning to the issue of cages and confinement, I'm very much aware of the strong public feeling on keeping farm animals in cages, and the recent campaigns, including by the RSPCA, urging the government to publish consultations on phasing out the use of enriched colony cages for laying hens and farrowing crates for pigs. Appreciate the RSPCA's role in leading the way on encouraging high standards when it comes to this issue, with RSPCA assured not permitting the use of colony cages for laying hens or farrowing crates for pigs. Now, I'm encouraged that the market itself is driving the move to alternative systems for laying hens, primarily free range and barn, and away from the use of cages. This transition to non-cage egg production has also been supported by the major supermarkets, who have pledged to stop selling shell eggs from hens kept in colony cages by 2025. This shift by retailers has accelerated the move away from colony cage systems. Free-range eggs account for over 60% of the total egg throughput in the UK. But we're not just going to leave this to market forces. The transition to cage-free systems is being supported through grants for laying hens and pullet farmers in England with flocks of 1,000 birds or more to refurbish or replace existing housing, including those looking to make the transition from colony cages to high welfare non-cage systems. As with cages for laying hens, the issue of ending the use of pig farrowing crates is one that not only affects the UK industry, but is also something that our European trading partners are also considering. Very happy to.
Jim Shannon.
Minister, I know that you and I, and hopefully everyone else in this chamber, appreciates the efforts and the contributions by farmers. Farmers, by and large, want their animals to be well looked after, and they try to achieve that. The National Farmers Union here, the Ulster Farmers Union back home, are working alongside farmers to improve things. Sometimes in debates you can get a wee bit lost in these things. It's important to remind that many people are trying their best to make things better.
I absolutely agree with the honourable member, and it's important to make that point that, of course, all our farmers want to raise their animals to the highest possible standards, but they need the right regulatory frameworks to make that possible, and that's what we're working on. And because, as with any change to our farming systems, as I said earlier, we need to consider the implications for trade. We already lead in Europe. I will.
Thank you very much. And, I appreciate the Minister setting out that he wants to be ambitious on animal protection and has asked us to watch this space, which we will do in terms of the cross-party interest there is in this room on animal protection issues. But in his reference to market forces and market trends in terms of animal welfare, could I just highlight that we are seeing a proliferation of huge industrial chicken sheds, including in Norfolk and Suffolk, but I'm sure around the country. Tens of thousands of birds, and in some cases it's pigs, in really unpleasant, cramped, indoor conditions that are not consistent with the sorts of welfare standards that the Minister's talking about. So what action will be taken now by the government to stop this trend, which is about animal protection and about river pollution and environmental standards?
Well, I would just actually rather disagree with him here in the sense that this assumption that larger scale production facilities, the animal welfare standards are lower. I think that is a false premise, and I would urge him to look at some of the smaller premises sometimes which are undercapitalised and I'm afraid do not always achieve the welfare standards that we're looking for. I don't think it's as simple as he makes out. And the trade issues are really important because we already lead in Europe, going back to the pig sector here, in having a significant outdoor pig sector. 40% of the national sow breeding herd farrow freely on outdoor units with no option for confinement, and DEFRA's statutory welfare code of practice for pigs states that the aim is for farrowing crates to no longer be necessary and for any new system to protect the welfare of the sow as well as her piglets. In the meantime, under the new Get Funding to Improve Animal Health and Welfare Service, a fully funded vet visit known as the Animal Health and Welfare Review is available to pig farmers to improve pig health and welfare. So I think it's fair to say the United Kingdom is rightly proud of the high animal welfare standards that underpin our high-quality British produce, and we will work to ensure we address low confidence and provide stability for the farming sector. So in conclusion, Mr Twigg, this government is looking forward to delivering the most ambitious programme for animal welfare in a generation. I very much hope we can build upon the excellent relationship we've forged with the RSPCA over many years to progress the various important animal welfare issues that have been raised today.
Ruth Jones to wind up.
Thank you, Mr Twigg, and I do want to thank every honourable member who's taken part in this debate today. The members for Strangford, for Clwyd East, for Waveney Valley, good to welcome him to his place, Sheffield Brightside and Hillsborough, Westmoreland and Lonsdale, of course, and the Shadow Minister and the Minister. Everybody, I think, has made intelligent, reasonable and well-informed contributions to this debate today. And so many valid and important points have been made. There is no doubt that animal welfare would not be where it is today without the immense contribution of the RSPCA over the last 2 centuries. And today we know that the animal rescue line from the RSPCA receives around 1 million calls a year, or 1 every 6 seconds. And staff work across England and Wales to investigate allegations of animal cruelty and neglect. And I was recently lucky enough to be able to visit the RSPCA Centre in Newport East, in my neighbouring constituency, and I accompanied an RSPCA inspector on her rounds for the day. And I would urge all members to go out with an RSPCA inspector. It really opens your eyes to what they're really having to deal with. And I saw firsthand the vital work that they do there, but the RSPCA staff, supporters and volunteers continue to work tirelessly for a better world for every kind of animal. And in line with the Shadow Minister, I would like to also finish by paying tribute to the RSPCA Chief Exec, Chris Sherwood, who is leaving the RSPCA, which I know they will be missing him, because he's led them since 2018. And I want to thank him and all the other staff for their hard work. And today we celebrate the RSPCA, which is a well-loved organisation whose work ensures that animal welfare is at the forefront of our agenda. So thank you.
The question is that this House has considered the government support for the RSPCA. As many of that opinion say aye, of the contrary no, I think the ayes have it, the ayes have it. Order, order.